The first sign was a notification, not even the text itself, just the preview on his locked screen as the phone lit up while he showered. Can't wait for Friday at the Vineyard Cottage, bought that red lingerie, you. The rest disappeared into the ellipsis of Apple's privacy settings. The universe has a sick sense of humor. Doesn't it, giving you just enough information to destroy your world, but not enough to understand exactly how it ends? I'm Elena, the woman who was standing there, toothbrush frozen mid-stroke, staring at her husband's phone on a random Thursday morning in March. 11 years of marriage, evaporating in the steam of his shower. That moment crystallized everything. The late nights at work, the sudden password changes, the weekend conferences that left no digital footprint. The way he'd stopped looking me in the eyes during sex, the subtle shift in how he'd begun to critique my appearance. After never doing so. For over a decade, I didn't touch his phone. I didn't need to. Something inside me had already known, had been knowing, had been waiting for confirmation of what my gut had been screaming for months. Instead, I rinsed my mouth, applied my makeup with mechanical precision, and went to work like it was any other day. But it wasn't any other day. It was the first day of my new life, one where I finally admitted to myself that Martin, my college sweetheart, the man I'd built a life with, was someone else, and planning to take her to our vineyard cottage, the one we'd scrimped and saved for the one where I'd miscarried, our only pregnancy 2 years ago, the one place I thought was sacred to us. I'm not naturally vindictive, I'm a compliance attorney. I solve problems methodically, I gather evidence, I build cases, and that's exactly what I did that night. While Martin slept, I used his fingerprint to unlock his phone, a risky move, but he sleeps like the dead. After his Thursday tennis matches and 2 bourbons, what I found wasn't just an affair, it was an alternate reality. Her name was Natalie, not some 20-something intern, but a married brand consultant. His age, 41, they'd been seeing each other for 7 months. I scrolled through hundreds of messages, thousands of moments of betrayal, each one a tiny razor across my heart. Your wife doesn't understand you like I do. She'd written a classic line, so unoriginal it would be funny if it weren't tearing my life apart. David is taking a business trip to Seattle this weekend, Vineyard Cottage. Another message from 2 weeks ago, David, her husband. I read those lines again and again until the words lost meaning and became just sharp edges. Each message felt like a deliberate stab, proof not just of infidelity, but of a whole secret world built without me. I imagine them laughing, sharing private jokes, discussing their days, their plans, while I was home, folding his laundry, cooking his dinners, waiting for a version of him that didn't exist anymore. My body felt foreign to me. Numb fingers, tight chest, nausea curling inside my stomach like smoke. I wanted to scream, but instead I sat still, absorbing every detail like I was assembling a case file, because rage without strategy is useless. Something shifted in me, then not just pain, not just rage, but a cold, clear purpose. If Martin and Natalie wanted to play adults behaving badly, I could play too, but I'd play better. Finding David wasn't difficult. LinkedIn, Instagram, a few strategic searches. He worked in urban planning. Handsome in that artistic, slightly disheveled way. Did he know? Was he as clueless as I had been? I drafted and deleted 17 different messages before finally sending one. This is Elena Cooper. I believe your wife, Natalie, and my husband, Martin, are having an affair. If you'd like to discuss this, my number is below. 3 hours later. My phone rang. Is this some kind of sick joke? His voice was tight, controlled, but I could hear the tremor. I wish it were. I replied, they're planning to meet at our vineyard cottage this Friday. The silence stretched between us, 2 strangers, united by betrayal. What do you want to do about it? He finally asked. That's when the idea crystallized, perfect in its simplicity, devastating in its potential. How do you feel about surprising them? I asked, a strange calm settling over me. I have keys. We could be there waiting. His laugh was hollow. That's either the craziest or most brilliant thing I've ever heard. Sometimes they're the same thing. I said we agreed to meet at a coffee shop the next day to compare notes and finalize our plan. I remember sitting across from him, studying his face for the first time. He had kind eyes, sad eyes. Now betrayal had aged him overnight, just as it had me. They'll arrive around 7. I explained, sliding my coffee between my hands. Martin told me he's at a medical conference in Phoenix. Natalie told you Seattle branding seminar. David's mouth twisted. 9 years of marriage, and I never thought to verify a single thing. Don't beat yourself up. I said trust isn't stupidity, it's the baseline of marriage. Was he corrected? We spent 2 hours planning our ambush, not with yelling or violence, nothing so undignified, but with calculated, devastating precision. The cheaters thought they were orchestrating a romantic getaway. Instead, they were walking into a reckoning as we parted ways. David hesitated. Are we doing the right thing? I considered this. I don't know if it's right, I admitted, but it's necessary for us to move forward. Whatever that looks like, he nodded. Understanding that night, Martin kissed me goodbye, suitcase in hand. I'll call you when I land in Phoenix, he said. I smiled. Have a safe flight, honey. I love you. The lie tasted like ashes in my mouth. Friday morning dawned bright and clear, a perfect vineyard day, mockingly perfect. I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years, packed an overnight bag, told my assistant I needed a mental health day. If she only knew the drive to our Sonoma cottage normally filled me with peace. Today, each mile marker counted down to confrontation. I rehearsed what I might say, what I might do, but nothing felt adequate for the magnitude of this betrayal. David and I had agreed to meet at a diner a mile from the vineyard cottage at 2:00 p.m. This gave us plenty of time to set up before their expected 7:00 p.m. arrival. When I walked in, he was already there, nursing a cup of coffee, eyes fixed on the window. Second thoughts, I asked, sliding into the booth. About $1 million, he admitted. But I'm still here. We were awkward at first. What's the protocol for planning an ambush with your spouse's affair, partner's spouse, but shared trauma creates strange intimacies over club sandwiches that neither of us could finish. We moved beyond the affair to discover real people beneath the pain. David was a talented designer who'd put his career on hold to support Natalie's ambitions. I designed our home, he said quietly, every inch customized for our future family, the family she apparently doesn't want with me. I shared how Martin and I had been trying for a baby for years. The miscarriage hit him hard. I explained. He shut down emotionally. I thought we were healing together, but I guess he was healing with someone else. You deserved better, David said, meeting my eyes. So did you. By the time we paid the check, a peculiar solidarity had formed between us, fellow travelers on this journey. No one would choose at the vineyard cottage. We moved with strange efficiency. I gave David the tour, trying to ignore the memories that haunted every room. They'll likely head straight to the master bedroom, I said clinically, as if discussing a real estate showing. Should we wait there? He asked. I considered this. No, the living room. Better lighting, more exits, less intimate. We prepared the scene like stage directors, placed 2 chairs facing the entrance, set a bottle of Martin's favorite bourbon on the coffee table with 4 glasses. A theatrical touch, but psychological warfare requires props. As we moved around the house, I felt a phantom pressure in my chest. Every corner, every piece of furniture, whispered memories. His laugh in the kitchen, the night we slow danced barefoot by the fire, the way I cried into his chest after the miscarriage. It all lived here, still, clinging to the walls like dust I could never clean. I kept my voice steady for David, but inside, something trembled. This wasn't just a house. It was the shell of who we had been. While we waited, I wandered to the deck, overlooking the vineyards. The wind moved through the grapevines relentlessly, nature indifferent to human drama. David joined me, his presence oddly comforting. When did you first suspect? He asked. There were 1,000 little things I said for perfume on his collar. Once he claimed it was from hugging a colleague. Goodbye, late-night texts he'd shield from my view, but mostly it was how he stopped. Seeing me, really seeing me. David nodded. Natalie started picking fights, creating distance to justify what she was doing, the classic cheater's playbook. I agreed. Demonize your partner to rationalize your betrayal. We shared stories as the sun began its descent. How Martin and I met in law school. How David proposed to Natalie in Florence. The lives we thought we were building, the futures now shattered. What will you do after David asked divorce? I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to burn everything down. Another part remembers the man I married. I turned to him. I still love her, he said simply, but I'll never trust her again. What's a marriage without trust? The notification from my security system interrupted us. Car approaching my stomach dropped to my feet. They're early, I whispered, checking my watch. 6:15 p.m.? We rushed inside, taking our positions like actors who hadn't quite rehearsed enough. The sound of laughter floated up the path, carefree, intimate laughter that pierced my heart. A key in the lock, the door swinging open. Martin entered first, carrying 2 overnight bags and a bottle of wine. Natalie followed with a grocery bag and flowers. They were so wrapped up in each other. They didn't notice us immediately, baby. Where should I put? Martin began, then froze mid-sentence as his eyes locked with mine. The wine bottle crashed to the floor. Natalie gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, flowers tumbling from her grasp. 4 people, 2 marriages, 1 moment of terrible crystalline revelation. Welcome to our vineyard cottage, I said, my voice unnaturally calm. David and I thought we'd join the party. Martin went white. Natalie started trembling. Elena. I can explain, Martin started. Can you really? I tilted my head because I'm fascinated to hear how you explain your brand consultant in our vineyard cottage, the one where I lost our baby. Please enlighten us. Natalie turned to David, tears already streaming. David, this isn't. Don't. He cut her off. Just don't. We found the messages, all of them. The room pulsed with tension, so thick it was hard to breathe. 7 months, I said, looking between them. 7 months of lies. Did you laugh about how stupid we were? How easily fooled? It wasn't like that, Martin pleaded, taking a step forward. Then what was it like? David demanded, standing. Explain it to us. We've got all weekend. And that's when Natalie crumbled, literally sank to the floor among the scattered flowers and broken glass. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I'm so sorry. Martin remained frozen, his face a battlefield of emotions. Elena, please, let's talk privately. No, I said firmly, no more secrets. No more private discussions. Whatever you have to say, you can say it in front of everyone. And so began the most excruciating 2 hours of my life. What they couldn't know, was that this confrontation had been choreographed with more precision than they could imagine, David. And I hadn't just stumbled into this ambush, we'd engineered it. While they stumbled through explanations and tearful apologies, I maintained my composure, letting the weight of their betrayal hang in the air. Martin kept glancing at me with confusion. He'd expected rage, hysteria. Perhaps not this icy control. He didn't know. I'd spent the previous day collecting evidence. I'd forwarded their entire text history to my secure email. I'd photographed the credit card statements showing dinners, hotel rooms, gifts, all meticulously hidden in business expenses. I'd even recorded a conversation with Martin's assistant, who unwittingly confirmed he had never been booked for a Phoenix conference. Let's all sit down, I suggested after their initial shock had somewhat subsided. We have a lot to discuss. The 4 of us arranged ourselves in the living room, like some bizarre therapy session. Martin and Natalie, on the couch, their body language still unconsciously intimate, despite the circumstances. David and I in separate chairs facing them. I poured 4 glasses of bourbon, the expensive bottle. Martin reserved for celebrations, a toast. I said to honesty. Finally, Martin looked perplexed by my demeanor. He'd expected to fight fire with fire. Instead, he was fighting fire with ice. How long have you known? He asked cautiously. Long enough, I replied. I didn't specify that it had been only 36 hours. Let him think I'd been gathering intelligence for weeks. Let him wonder what else I knew. David had played his part beautifully. So far, we'd agreed he would embody righteous anger, while I maintained clinical detachment, good cop, bad cop, but both cops were the betrayed spouses. Were you ever going to tell us? David demanded, or were we just supposed to live in ignorance forever? Natalie couldn't meet his eyes. I don't know, she whispered. I kept telling myself it would end, but it didn't. I observed, in fact, it escalated. Weekend getaways, plans for the future. Martin flinched at this. Bullseye, you've been talking about a future together? I continued, watching his face. Haven't you? His silence was confirmation enough. What they didn't realize was that, while waiting for them to arrive, David and I had discovered something extraordinary. We liked each other, not romantically, but as humans. We'd formed a bond in our shared trauma. We'd also discovered we were both extremely strategic thinkers during those waiting hours. We'd moved beyond our initial plan of simple confrontation to something more sophisticated. We weren't just exposing the affair. We were reclaiming our power. Here's what's gonna happen, I said, setting down my untouched bourbon Martin. You have a choice to make tonight, but before you make it, you should know a few things. I reached into my bag and withdrew. A folder inside were prints of their text messages. The credit card statements, photos David had found on Natalie's cloud storage. Nothing explicit, but damning in their intimacy. First, I've met with Evelyn Saunders, I said. Martin blanched. Evelyn was the managing partner at our law firm, the firm where he and I both worked, where he was up for senior partner next month. Evelyn and I had a hypothetical discussion about workplace ethics. I continued about what might happen if, say, a senior associate was discovered having an affair with a brand consultant whose company had active cases with the firm about conflicts of interest, about ethics violations. You wouldn't, he breathed. I corrected yet, I've simply explored my options. David picked up the thread seamlessly. And Natalie, Corvista Consulting has a strict non-fraternization policy regarding client relationships. Martin's firm represents 3 of Corvista's biggest accounts. The blood drained from Natalie's face. How did you? I'm on the ethics board. At my design firm, David explained. I know how these policies work. I also know your regional director, Claire. We play squash on Wednesdays. It wasn't true. They'd met once at a charity event, but Natalie didn't know that this was the genius of our plan. We weren't threatening them outright. We were simply informing them of realities they'd ignored. While wrapped up in passion, consequences existed regardless of our actions. I leaned forward. Here's what I find interesting, Martin. When I lost our baby in this very house, you couldn't bear to comfort me. You said you needed space to process. Your grief was Natalie, your processing. Was she your comfort? While I cried myself to sleep alone for the first time, Natalie looked truly shocked. She turned to Martin. You never told me about a baby? The air between them crackled with a new tension, the first crack in their united front. There's so much you don't know about each other, David observed, so much you've hidden, not just from us, but from each other. This had been our most brilliant insight, that affairs are built on performances. Martin and Natalie had been showing each other their highlight reels, not their behind-the-scenes footage. We just needed to pull back the curtain, Martin, I said quietly. Did you tell Natalie about your gambling problem in law school? The one your parents bailed you out of. The reason we've kept separate finances for 11 years. Another hit. Natalie's eyes widened, and Natalie. David continued. Does Martin know about your brother in rehab? The real reason we couldn't afford to renovate the kitchen last year was because we were paying for Jordan's treatment. Martin shifted uncomfortably. What is this, some kind of character assassination? No, I replied calmly, it's reality. The messy, complicated reality you both sidestepped for fantasy. We weren't being cruel for cruelty's sake. We discovered in our conversations that both Martin and Natalie had painted their spouses as somehow deficient, justifying their affair by highlighting our supposed inadequacies. This was our counter-narrative. You both created idealized versions of each other, David, but relationships, real sustainable ones, aren't built on idealization, they're built on seeing someone's flaws and loving them. Anyway, I stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the darkness that had fallen over the vineyard. We're not here to decide your futures for you. We're here to reclaim our own dignity. Martin stood too, approaching me cautiously. Elena, can we please talk alone? Now I turned to face him. No, Martin. The word felt heavy but resolute. I saw the brief flicker of disbelief cross his face. That quiet expectation that I would step aside with him. That the old patterns still held. But they didn't. I wasn't that woman anymore. Not the one who whispered forgiveness just to keep the peace. Not the one who swallowed doubts and dimmed herself so he could shine. I met his eyes without wavering, and in that moment, he seemed to finally understand the permanence of what he'd broken. Whatever you want to say to me, you can say in front of everyone. That's the point of tonight. No more secrets, no more compartmentalizing. In his eyes, I saw something shift, a realization that the dynamic between us had fundamentally changed. I was no longer the reactive, emotional wife he could manipulate. I had become a force to be reckoned with. What happened next would determine the course of 4 lives. But regardless of their choices, David and I had already won. We'd refused to be passive victims. We'd seized control of a narrative that had excluded us. We'd forced reality into a fantasy. As we stood there at the crossroads, I felt strangely calm. Whatever happened, I would survive it. I caught David's eye across the room, and he gave me the slightest nod of solidarity. The night was just beginning. I wanted divorce. The words hung in the air, but they hadn't come from me. They'd come from Natalie. Martin stared at her in disbelief. What, Natalie? You can't be serious after everything. Everything, what, Martin? She interrupted, suddenly finding her voice. Everything we've risked, everything we've thrown away. Look at them. She gestured toward David and me. Look at what we've done to them. This was an unexpected development. David and I exchanged glances. Our plan had anticipated anger, denial, perhaps even continued deception. But not this sudden attack of conscience from Natalie. You told me your marriage was essentially over. Natalie continued, turning to Martin. You said Alina was cold, career-obsessed, that you were just waiting for the right time to leave. I felt the blow like a physical pain. Is that how he'd portrayed me, cold, career-obsessed, when I'd spent years supporting his ambitions, rearranging my schedule for his needs, trying desperately to start a family he claimed to want? And you? She turned to David, tears streaming down her face. I convinced myself you didn't really love me anymore, that you were just going through the motions. It was easier than admitting I was the problem. David's composure finally broke. How could you think that I designed our entire home around your happiness? I planned trips, date nights, tried to talk about having children, which you kept delaying because I was confused. She cried because something was missing, and I didn't know what. Martin moved towards Natalie, but she backed away. Don't, she turned to me. I'm sorry, Elena. I know that means nothing, but I am truly sorry. An uncomfortable silence fell. This was veering wildly off script. The neat resolution David and I had imagined, exposing the affair, presenting our evidence, watching them crumble under the weight of consequences, was dissolving into something messier, more human. Martin sank onto the couch, head in his hands. I never meant for any of this to happen, yet you made 1,000 deliberate choices to ensure it did happen. I replied, my voice steady. You lied. You schemed. You gaslit me when I questioned late nights and missing receipts. You used our shared trauma as an excuse to betray me. He looked up, his eyes red after we lost the baby. Something broke in me, Elena. I couldn't be the husband you needed. Natalie was an escape. I repeated, while I was drowning in grief. You were escaping. David walked to the bar and poured himself another drink. So what happens now? Where does this leave us? And that's when Martin dropped the second bombshell. Natalie's pregnant. The world tilted beneath my feet. I grabbed the back of a chair to steady myself. What? David's voice was barely audible. Natalie closed her eyes, tears streaming. 8 weeks. I just found out last week. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. After years of trying, after the devastating loss in this very house, Martin had casually, accidentally created a child with someone else. Is it mine? David asked, his voice breaking. Natalie nodded. It has to be Martin, and I have always been careful. Another twist. Another recalibration. The child wasn't Martin's, but did that make it better or worse? Martin looked genuinely shocked. You didn't tell me you were pregnant. I was going to tell you this weekend. She said. I needed to figure out what I wanted to do. I found myself watching this exchange with a strange detachment, as if observing characters in a film. The betrayal had transcended my personal pain and become something almost anthropologically interesting. The complex web of lies, consequences, and human frailty. There was a part of me, distant and quiet, that was still reeling from the cruel symmetry of it all. I had given everything to that man, my body, my trust, my years. And now another woman, the one who had helped destroy our marriage, was carrying a life we had so desperately tried and failed to create. I wanted to scream, to weep, but nothing came. Just this cold, brittle awareness that life was wildly, savagely unfair. So you were planning to tell your lover that you're pregnant with your husband's child. I summarized during your romantic getaway in my vineyard cottage. The irony is almost artistic. David drained his glass. I've wanted children for 3 years. You kept saying not yet, all while sleeping with someone else. The room felt charged with devastating potential energy. 4 people caught in an impossible geometry of hurt and then my phone rang, a shrill intrusion from the outside world. I glanced at the screen and felt a fresh wave of disbelief. "It's Evelyn," I said to Martin, the managing partner. "You're so afraid of disappointing," I answered, walking to the kitchen for privacy. The conversation was brief but consequential. When I returned, 3 pairs of eyes fixed on me. That was Evelyn confirming our breakfast meeting tomorrow. I explained she's staying at her place down the road. Apparently, there's a development in the Core Vista consulting case. She wanted to make sure we were both prepared. The color drained from Martin's face. Both. "Yes," I told her. "We were, coincidentally, at our vineyard cottage. This weekend," she suggested we meet at the morning Harvest Cafe at 900 a.m. All 3 of us natally sank into a chair. "This is really happening, isn't it? Our lives are actually falling apart." I looked at her with unexpected compassion. Lives don't fall apart all at once. Natally, they erode decision by decision, but they can also be rebuilt. The same way David moved to stand beside me, a united front. Elena and I have made our own decisions today. We've decided not to be collateral damage in your narrative. "What does that mean?" Martin asked warily. I met his eyes directly. "It means I've already moved half our assets to accounts you can't access. It means I've documented every aspect of your affair, including the misuse of company resources to conduct it. It means I'm prepared to file for divorce on grounds of adultery with comprehensive evidence." His face contorted. "You planned this whole thing. You're enjoying this, no, Martin?" I said quietly, "I'm not enjoying any of this, but I refuse to be a victim." In my own story, I turned to Natalie. "As for your pregnancy, that's between you and David. But whatever you decide, I suggest you both get tested for CI immediately. Given the casual approach to fidelity in this room, it's just good health care." The clinical precision of my statement landed like a slap. Both Martin and Natalie flinched. David cleared his throat. "Natalie, I'll be staying at my brother's tonight. Take some time to decide what you want. Real clarity, not just reaction. I'll call you tomorrow." And Martin, I added, "You can have the vineyard cottage tonight. I won't be staying." "Neither will David. We've both booked rooms at the Hillside Inn." Martin looked confused. "You're staying at a hotel together, adjacent rooms." I clarified, "We've become something you might not recognize, friends bound by shared experience. We're having dinner together and planning our next steps." "Next steps?" Martin echoed. I nodded. "Life continues, Martin, with or without you in it. That's my decision to make now as David," and I gathered our things to leave. Natalie caught my arm. "For what it's worth, he talked about you constantly, even when he was criticizing. It was always with this undertone of awe. I think he still loves you." I gently removed her hand. "That's the tragedy, isn't it, love? Isn't enough trust, respect, honesty? Those are the foundations. Love without them is just a pretty house built on sand." We left them there, surrounded by the wreckage of their choices as David and I walked down the vineyard path toward our cars. The sound of wind through the vines provided a constant, soothing backdrop. "Well," he said finally, "that didn't go exactly as planned." I laughed, an unexpected sound of genuine amusement. "No, it certainly didn't. Are you okay about the baby?" He looked out toward the dark rows of grapes. "I don't know, part of me is furious. Another part still wants the family." "We planned. You don't have to decide tonight," I reminded him. "Neither do you," he said. "About Martin?" I nodded, grateful for his understanding. We reached our cars and paused, 2 strangers connected by extraordinary circumstances. "Dinner?" He asked. "Dinner." I agreed. "I think we've earned it. 6 months can change everything or nothing at all." In my case, it changed nearly everything. Martin and I divorced, not dramatically. No courtroom showdowns or screaming matches once exposed to daylight. Our marriage dissolved with surprising efficiency. The evidence I'd gathered ensured a settlement heavily in my favor. Martin didn't fight it. Perhaps his own guilt was punishment enough. He didn't lose his job, though he did lose the senior partner promotion. Evelyn was disappointed, but pragmatic. "The firm has weathered worse scandals," she told me over coffee, though I expected better from him. Natalie and David's story took a different turn. After weeks of separation and counseling, they decided to try again with clear boundaries and painful honesty. The pregnancy became a complicated bridge back to each other. Their daughter was born last month. David sent me a photo with a simple message: "New beginnings are possible. Thank you for that night." For everything, Martin and Natalie ended their affair immediately after our confrontation. According to mutual friends, they can barely look at each other at industry. Events now fantasy rarely survives reality's harsh light. As for me, I sold my share of the vineyard cottage to Martin. Some places carry too many ghosts. Instead, I bought a small cottage further up the coast. It sits on a cliff overlooking the Pacific, wild and beautiful, and mine alone. I've started dating again, cautiously, mindfully. I've learned to recognize red flags I once ignored. I've learned that loneliness within a marriage is far more devastating than solitude. On your own terms, David, and I still meet occasionally for coffee or dinner, not romantically. We both knew that trauma. Bonding isn't a foundation for love, but genuine friendship grew from our shared experience. He brings his daughter. Sometimes I hold her and feel a complex mix of emotions, but never resentment. She's innocent. In all of this, last week I ran into Martin at a colleague's retirement party, the first time we'd seen each other socially since the divorce finalized. So the story is over, our wonderful friends. Are you still here at this hour? If you're still with me, it means something in this story has touched your heart, resonated with your own experiences, or opened a door to reflection. And I want to pause with you here, in this moment, and look at it all, not with judgment, but with honesty. This wasn't just a story of betrayal. It was about the moment you wake up and realize the life you thought was yours has been slipping through your fingers. It's about the courage it takes not to scream, but to sit quietly and say, I will not be erased. What Elena and David taught us is that healing doesn't start when apologies are made. It starts when truth enters the room. Clear, cutting, undeniable. They didn't just uncover an affair. They uncovered themselves again. And through the hurt, through the wreckage, they chose clarity over chaos, dignity over despair. As the writer Cheryl Strayed once said, you don't have a right to the cards you believe you should have been dealt. You have an obligation to play the hell out of the ones you're holding. To those watching who've known the sting of betrayal or the quiet ache of loneliness in a relationship that no longer sees you, know this: your worth is not up for debate. You can rebuild. You can rise. You can choose a new beginning, even when the ending was not what you deserved. So please, if this story gave you something tonight, share it. Like this video. Subscribe for more stories that don't shy away from the messy truth. Let's keep walking through the shadows, together, toward the light. Because healing isn't linear, but it is possible.